Welcome back to my channel, guys. So in today's video we're going to be answering some questions that I got via Instagram. I put this poll right here, and I told people to ask me questions concerning faith, relationships, God, and fitness. And I got 4 very intelligent questions that I like to answer. And yeah, I'll just get straight into the video and answer those questions. And the last 2 questions are going to be, the answers of the last 2 questions are going to be a little bit longer, because that's honestly what I'm basing my video off of, is the last 2 questions, because they're a bit longer. They're about more about like my faith, and I really like to go in depth when I'm talking about like faith and God and all things related to that. So that's what the last 2 videos are going to be, that's what this video is going to be based on, really, the last 2 questions. Hope I said that right. So the first question I got from my girlfriend is, where do you see yourself in the near future? So honestly, I don't like answering questions like this, especially when people are like, oh, where do you see yourself in 5? I honestly don't like answering questions like this, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Like, honey, I'm just trying to get to Friday. You feel me? Just kidding. But she did say near future. Near future could be in 6 months, in a year. So basically in a year, I'm just going to give that one since it's easier. In a year, I see myself graduating from well, not graduating, I graduate later than expected, but I see myself finishing up my university education, and then hopefully getting a full-time job, and also moving into my first apartment, getting myself a car, and just like starting my adult life, because that's like when uni's done, I have to like go straight into adulting, like 101, even though I've started now. But next year is just gonna be different for me, and I want to make like very big moves. If you know me, like, I plan 5 years ahead. No, not 5 years ahead, but I plan like a year ahead. Every year I always have plans that I have for this year, and then when next year comes, I always have plans for that year as well. So yeah, I'm a big planner, big organizer. So yeah, just see myself doing big things, accomplishing all my goals I've set for the year. But yeah, those are just some of the few things I see myself doing in the near future. Hopefully that makes sense. So the second question she asks is, what influences your creative process? I think I'm pretty much influenced by everything around me. I love creating like lifestyle content, so that includes food, fashion, and music is really part of it, but I don't create music, but just basically lifestyle, like everything that makes the world beautiful. I just love create content around that. I feel inspired by environments, places, boutiques, restaurants, fashion, like stores, like malls, just everything basically. And when I see something that's beautiful, I'm just inspired by it, and I'm just, it just makes me want to either create based on that, or create in that environment, or just take something from it. So that's what influences my creative process. Now moving on to the final 2 questions that are a bit more, like, the answers are a bit more longer. Anyways, one of the question was my relationship status, if you are single. If single, are you searching? If searching, is it actively or passively? 10 more. This person is such a fool. Just kidding. So Jesus. Anyways, yeah, I'm pretty much single. I'm single, and I'm very satisfied with being single at the moment. in God's word, it does say that singleness is a gift from God, and I believe that very strongly. I've never been more happy in my life, just like me chasing God and finding out my purpose and pursuing like what God wants me to do. I don't really care too much for a relationship right now, honestly. I keep telling my friends that I want to get married when I'm 30 years old, because I do feel like that's when I'm going to actually have time to become one with another person. If this is not me like dismissing God's plans or anything like that, obviously God's plans overrule, like he can take full control, or he takes full control. I've allowed him to take full control. So but based on my plans, I don't really see, you know, me getting married at like a young age, or young like I basically don't see myself getting married at like in my 20s. Basically, that's why I always see like 30 something. But obviously, if that's not God's plan for me, then something else can happen and I can get married in my 20s. If I do meet the love of my life and we decide to get married in my 20s, that's fine, that's okay. But according to my plans, I don't see myself, that's what I always tell my friends anyways. But yeah, I feel like me being single, especially in this time, is intentional. Like I know I say some things are intentional, but I feel like this one is really intentional, because I just feel it, that I'm supposed to be where, like, everything I have, I'm supposed to have where I am. I'm supposed to be in that position. So like, it might sound crazy, but me being single, I feel like God has plans for me in my singleness that I have to achieve, right? If that makes sense. Because I know I was listening to one of the pastors that I want, like, one of the podcasts. He's a pastor and he has a podcast, right? So I was watching his podcast, and he was like, Adam didn't God didn't give Adam Eve until he, like, he saw that everything he had done was completed. Like, he finished his doings on earth, and like he took care of the animals, everything like that. And he when he saw that everything was done, like the creative process was done and everything, he then gave him a companion. I hope it's adding up, but that just made me think, like, whoa, that's like, it might not necessarily be my life, but I just could, like, it was so deep. What he said was so deep that I feel like I could relate to it, because I just feel like me being single at this point, me not even caring about, like, oh, which boy likes me, or liking any guys at the moment. It's like, it's just intentional for me to focus on deeper things and deepen my connection with God. Because honestly, before, it's like, before I gave my life to Christ, right, I was like a huge flirt. I was also like a very, like, someone who was very sexual, if I could put it like that. I just love flirting with guys, and it was a thing where, like, I felt in being like all those bad things, it not bad, but like, they're not the purest things, but in being all those things, I one thing I noticed that brought me down was, like, the guys that would always come and talk to me, they would want something from me, so they wouldn't want like a genuine friendship. And in the back of my mind, I knew it, but this evil part of me wanted to entertain, like, flirting, like pushing sexual feelings and pushing like lust and things like that. And I noticed that was the thing with guys, like, anytime, that's why I had like serious trust issues with guys. Like, anytime a guy would even message me, and 95% of the time, that's what they wanted, that's what was happening, right? They didn't want to just be friends with me. So it just gave me the mindset that, okay, this person is coming to me, this is what they want, let me just entertain it while I can. But I've noticed that ever since then, like, ever since I gave my life to Christ, I've noticed that certain guys have stopped coming to my what's it called, they've stopped coming to my area, basically. Like, I've been able to stray away, and I have noticed that, like, any guy who approaches me now, it's more of like a friendship. It's not like, oh, you look hot in this dress or something like that, whilst I was getting that a lot before, right? So I just feel like now God has separated that energy from me, because honestly I've been praying for it to go away. I've been praying for, like, because it doesn't make sense for me to be entertaining something that's just going to spark up negative feelings and sinful feelings. So I know I kind of switched roads, but I just hope everything is adding up. But yeah, it's just like I feel like I have a purpose, right? I finally feel like I have a purpose. You know, when you're searching for your purpose in life, but I'm slowly finding mine, and I feel like me being single is intentional for God to like keep me focused, because yeah, I just don't have the energy right now to, you know, honestly just care for, like, oh yeah, even having crush or like MCM or all that is just out of my books. And I honestly don't even see, I keep saying it but people think I'm joking, but I honestly don't see myself being in a relationship for a long time. Like that's just on period. I know there's like a lot of social media influence in like being single and being a Christian, or like being like people getting looked down upon because they're single, or the phrase that used to trigger me before, and like, oh, you're so pretty, like, why are you single? Like, you don't, that to me doesn't make sense, because it's like, oh, because I'm beautiful that means I need to have a man. Like, beauty equals man. Like, it doesn't add up to me. But yeah, I feel like as a human, as a Christian, you should find what it is that God wants you to do before you worry about being with someone else, because you are going to have a deeper connection. You're going to have a deeper purpose in life within yourself that you have to discover before you start to look for the basically priorities, right? So try and find that within yourself before searching for something else, right? If that makes sense. So yeah, if you're single, don't be depressed. Don't think, oh, it's like because you're not this, because you're not that. It's like, it's neither of those things. Just continue to pray. And if you feel like, I honestly don't think that people should be too worried about like having a companion kind of thing. It's a good thing to wish for, honestly. I'm not saying it's not, but don't now think your life is over because you don't have a boyfriend or anything like that. Try and find your purpose first and discover your true self before, you know, you start to seek things like that. I hope that made sense. But yeah, it's not actively, passively. I don't think I was ever searching for a boyfriend. Obviously there are times where I have craved affection. I'm human. There are times where I've craved affection and I've wanted to like cuddle up and do all those things like that, but it will come like once in a year, honestly, for me. I just don't want to dwell on that. I don't want to put so much time into looking for the right person that you know when you like imagine the right guy for so long, that even if a guy comes along and the guy treats you well, you start to what's the word, Jesus, English is so hard, you start to put all those features on that guy that just comes along, and that might necessarily not even be your soulmate, but because you have created this image of somebody you love and just placed it on that person that just came along, it's you've put yourself in trouble, basically. So to sum it all up, I am very single and I'm happy like that. Not actively searching, was never passively searching. I don't even know how you search for a boyfriend, honestly, but zero. But yeah, that's my response. And so the last question I have here is, how do you handle sin in regards to your faith? This question actually really made me happy, because I'm like, I just love to answer questions about faith. I'm going to give you just 2 points. The first point would be to admit and pray. I feel like sin isn't, you have to first define what sin is. A lot of times, like me for example, I used to think sin was just anything that like for example disobeying any of the 10 commandments, but that doesn't really even cover the depth of sin. Like sin is so much more than all the commandments that were listed, if that makes sense. It's not just one thing, it comes in like different forms, and to me it's basically anything. So anything that disturbs your relationship with God, I classify that as a sin. Anything that separates you from him, anything that separates you from your beliefs in him, your faith in him, basically to me that's sin. It could be addictions, bad habits, certain behavior traits that are not of him, those things that will cause God to be angry. I classify all those under. That's what the definition of sin, right? Admit it to yourself, admit it to God, admit it to the person you have sinned against, or and you like, it doesn't even have to be the person you've sinned against. It could be like just so say for example you have a certain behavior or trait that you feel makes other people angry, right, or has offended someone else, that kind of thing. So in that case you would admit to them that okay, you've noticed that this certain behavior in that I've displayed has offended you, and you apologize, things like that. That could be an example of admitting. And then praying is basically communication with yourself and God. So saying to him, Lord, I have sinned and falling short of your glory, please forgive me. Basically doing just that is you admitting it and praying about it. So, and praying about it basically is asking God for forgiveness, and admitting is more of just you acknowledging that you have sinned, which is like the biggest step for you to acknowledge it, because it's wrong for you to kind of like keep deceiving yourself and think that you're not deceiving God, but for you to keep deceiving yourself and think that you're deceiving God. But if you admit something, if you admit to it, then it's like you're taking responsibility for the sin that you have committed. God is merciful and he's kind. So the thing is, he knows when we have sinned. He has forgiven you even before you ask. But to admit to him and pray is you basically acknowledging him and being respectful. But in other words, he has forgiven you already even before you knew it. So once you've acknowledged, okay, this is the sin I've committed, you've prayed, the second step would be to avoid it. Okay, that's just what I would do. Avoid the sin at all cost. Yes, God is the merciful God. He's forgiving, he's loving, he's also not an idiot. There are things that people can't take for granted, especially God's forgiveness. God's forgiveness is one of those things, because he's so kind, he's so generous, that even where we ask him for forgiveness, basically he has already forgiven. Like, just imagine that he knows when we're about to sin, he knows when we've sinned, and he knows when we're going to ask for forgiveness. So he has already even canceled, he has erased that. But that doesn't mean that we would know what could make us sin and intentionally keep following that path. That is just taking God for granted, and we shouldn't do that. So avoid all the sins at all costs. In other words, flee from. There's so much, we have like so much power in us, in our body, in our soul, our mind, our spirit, our tongues. So we definitely know those things that can cause us to sin again. We definitely know those environments that we'll be in that will cause us to sin again. So we should try as much as possible to stray away from that, because it doesn't make sense for you to want to stop something and then you're still putting yourself in that situation that could lead to that thing you're trying to stop. That it's not adding up. We should think of, like I said before, sin is anything that separates us from God, that hinders our relationship with him, and basically those things that could get in the way of. It's like being in a relationship with someone you love, right? You wouldn't want to do things that hurt the person. You wouldn't want to do things that make the person angry, no matter how much you try to like hide it or run away from it. It's just like the fact that it will hurt that person, knowing the things that you do or the things you possess that can make you do wrong. So for example, gossiping. If you're in like in an environment where there's like so much gossip going on, try and do something different, try and change the topic, for example. Or if it's like addictions that you're suffering from, you can try and change like your environment or the people you hang around with, things like that. Just like taking steps to retract from sinning, and everything, honestly, everything is going to be fine in the end. So as long as you do those two things, like for example, for me, if I find and as humans we can be like super, I know it's like it's easier said than done. It's easy for me to just say or just admit and pray and like, Siri, I didn't call you. It's easier for me to just say admit and pray. Are you dumb? It's easier for me to just say admit and pray or like avoid it, and even the avoiding part is very difficult sometimes, or not difficult, but it can be challenging. I like to use the word challenging because difficult just means you can't do it, but avoiding can be challenging sometimes because it's like for example, say someone does something wrong to you, or like you're in a super vulnerable position where it's like, oh, you have to run to that thing you're addicted to, kind of like that. But like we just always remember that you have the Spirit of God in you. I think that's what one thing I remember. There's so much, like there's a bigger picture outside of like the things that will cause me to hurt God. So just always remembering that you have the Spirit of Him in you, and He's there to guide you, He's there to protect you. Remember that He's not going to, there are times where you'll be tempted, there are times where you'll be tested, of course, but He's not going to put you in a situation where you can't handle the temptation, if that makes sense, which is what is so good. He won't put you in a situation where like something is overly too heavy for you to overcome. That's why He's there, and that's why you should always remember that He's there. So once you sin, don't think you're like that's the end of your life. No, you have to just get back up, and always remember that even in sinning, even in doing all those things that hurt God, that's when the enemy sees his chance to prey on you. So just always have that drive that, okay, I've fallen short of God's glory. Get back up. Don't see it as an excuse to just lay there and like be like just stay there and be crying about it and like, oh, God, like God doesn't love me, blah blah blah. No, like He's already forgiven you even before you know it. So if you find yourself sinning, obviously don't intentionally sin, but if you do slip, just remember that God is in you and just get back up, and yeah, He'll forgive you and you move on. And I hope I answered that question right. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any more questions, oh my god, if you have any more questions, please send me more questions. I'd love to answer questions about these things. And yeah, I just hope I answered all your questions correctly, and I hope I answered them to your satisfaction. Yeah, I always get super nervous before filming videos like this, but God is within her, she shall not fall. That's a period. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching.